Her name is Lisa. We've been married for 8 years, and up until recently, things were normal. Or at least they felt that way. You know, the usual ups and downs of a long relationship. Nothing out of the ordinary, until a few weeks ago when I noticed she started acting off. It wasn't anything huge at first, just a slight distance. A void between us that hadn't been there before. She'd smile, but the smile didn't reach her eyes, and she'd stay late at work more often than usual. I know, classic signs, right? But it's more than that. One night, I was in bed waiting for Lisa. She said she was going to take a shower. But then I heard whispering. The weird part? It was coming from the walls. Like, not just muffled noise, but distinct, clear whispering. As if there were people right behind the drywall, murmuring secrets meant for no one else to hear. It was low, rhythmic, almost like chanting. I froze, trying to listen closer. The words were impossible to make out, but they felt angry. I thought maybe it was just the pipes or something, but then I heard her laugh. It wasn't her usual laugh. It was different, sharp, mocking, almost like she was sharing some kind of inside joke with whoever or whatever was whispering. I got out of bed, my feet hitting the cold floor silently as I made my way to the bathroom. The door was open just a crack, steam drifting out. I could see Lisa's silhouette through the frosted glass of the shower, but then I saw something else, another shadow. A figure, tall and dark, standing just behind the glass. My heart stopped. I wanted to burst in, to throw open the door and confront whatever was in there, but I couldn't move. I just stood there, staring, until the shadow seemed to vanish, dissolving into the steam. Lisa stepped out of the shower a moment later, wrapping a towel around herself. She looked at me, startled, as if she hadn't expected me to be there. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice cold, almost annoyed. I didn't have an answer. I just stood there, trying to process what I'd just seen. She walked past me without another word, her wet hair dripping onto the floor, and went straight to bed, leaving me standing in the hallway, my skin covered in goosebumps. I swear, ever since that night, things have only gotten weirder. The whispers haven't stopped. If anything, they've gotten louder. And Lisa, she's not the same. There's something in her eyes now, something I can't quite put my finger on. It's like she's looking right through me, like I'm not even there. I'll leave it here for now. I need to know if anyone else has experienced something like this. Am I going crazy, or is there something seriously wrong here? The next few nights after the shower incident were the worst nights of my life. Lisa seemed even more distant. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something, someone, between us, even though there was no physical presence to see. She kept working late, and even when she was home, she barely spoke to me. Every question I asked was met with a short, clipped answer, as if she couldn't be bothered. It wasn't like her. I tried to talk to her about it. I asked if something was wrong at work, or if there was something bothering her. She brushed me off, told me I was being paranoid, that I needed to stop worrying so much. But I couldn't stop. I knew something was going on. One night, I decided to wait up for her. She had texted me around 8 p.m. to say she was working late again. I sat on the couch, pretending to watch TV, my eyes constantly flicking towards the clock. 9, 10, 11. She still wasn't home. I tried calling her, but she didn't pick up. Finally, around midnight, I heard the front door creak open. I watched as she slipped inside, her face flushed, her hair slightly disheveled. She froze when she saw me sitting there, her eyes widening just for a split second before she quickly recovered, putting on her usual mask. "You scared me," she said, her voice a little too casual, her smile forced. "Why are you still up?" I looked at her, trying to read her expression. "Where were you?" I asked. It came out harsher than I intended. She frowned, her eyes narrowing. "I told you, I was working late. Why are you being like this, Frank?" She walked past me, dropping her bag by the door. The smell of perfume lingered in the air. Something floral, something that wasn't hers. I stood up, following her into the kitchen. "You weren't at work, Lisa," I called. "They said you left hours ago." She stopped, her back to me, her shoulders stiffening. For a moment, she didn't say anything. Then she turned around, her eyes cold. "Are you spying on me now?" Do you really think that's going to help whatever this is? She gestured between us, her voice dripping with frustration. My heart sank. I didn't know what to say. She walked away, heading upstairs without another word. I heard the bedroom door click shut, and I just stood there, feeling like I'd lost something I couldn't quite name. After Lisa's reaction, I decided to keep my distance for a bit. Maybe I was pushing too hard. Maybe if I just gave her some space, things would go back to normal. But they didn't. The distance between us only grew wider. She kept leaving the house at odd hours, always with some excuse that barely made sense. And every time I tried to reach out, she shut me down, her eyes filled with something like contempt. It was late one night when I heard a noise coming from the basement. Lisa was already asleep, or at least pretending to be. I slipped out of bed, my feet moving silently across the floor as I made my way downstairs. The basement door was closed, which was odd. We usually kept it open. I reached out to turn the handle, but it wouldn't budge. It was locked. We never locked the basement door. A shiver ran down my spine as I leaned in, pressing my ear against the wood. At first, there was nothing, just silence. Then I heard a sound, soft, almost like a thud. My mind raced, 1,000 possibilities flooding my thoughts. What was she hiding down there? Why lock the door? I turned around, ready to go back upstairs and grab the keys, but something stopped me. A feeling, deep in my gut, that whatever was behind that door was something I wasn't ready to see. Not yet. I went back to bed, but I couldn't sleep. Lisa lay beside me, her back turned, her breathing slow and steady. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing. The basement, the lies, the distance between us. It was all connected, but I couldn't see how. All I knew was that Lisa wasn't herself anymore, and I was starting to feel like a stranger in my own home. The next day, I decided I couldn't ignore it any longer. I had to find out what Lisa was hiding. I waited until she left for work before I began my search. I went through the house, checking for anything unusual, something that might give me a clue. I started with her office, but found nothing except stacks of papers and old bills. I moved to the closet, opening boxes and sifting through clothes. Still nothing. It wasn't until I went into the basement that I found something. The door was unlocked this time, and I hesitated for a moment before pushing it open. The air was cool, the kind of chill that seeps into your bones. I flipped on the light and made my way down the creaky stairs. The basement was cluttered, as usual. Old furniture, boxes of things we hadn't touched in years. But something caught my eye. On the floor, tucked in a corner behind an old armchair, was a small wooden box. It looked out of place, too clean and polished compared to the dusty surroundings. I picked it up, my fingers brushing over the intricate carvings on the lid. It wasn't locked, so I opened it. Inside was a stack of photographs. My heart pounded as I flipped through them. They were of Lisa, laughing, smiling, her arms wrapped around someone I didn't recognize. A man. They looked happy, too happy. My stomach twisted as I realized what I was looking at. I kept flipping, each picture worse than the last. There were photos of them at a restaurant, holding hands, at a park, her head resting on his shoulder. And then, one that made me stop. It was of them in what looked like a hotel room, Lisa sitting on the bed, her face turned towards the camera, her smile wide and genuine. I felt like I was going to be sick. I put the photos back in the box, my hands trembling. I didn't know what to think. I had suspected it, deep down, but seeing it like this, seeing the proof right in front of me, was like a punch to the gut. I closed the box, setting it back where I found it. I needed time to think, to figure out what to do next. That night, I didn't say anything to Lisa. I couldn't. I watched her move around the house, her smile as fake as ever, her eyes empty. And I wondered how long this had been going on, how long she had been lying to me. I don't know what to do, Reddit. Do I confront her? Do I pretend I don't know? All I know is that the woman I married is gone, and I don't know if I can ever get her back. I couldn't take it any longer. The next morning, as Lisa was getting ready for work, I decided to confront her. I had spent all night rehearsing what I was going to say, but as I watched her pull on her jacket, every word seemed to vanish from my mind. My hands were trembling, and my mouth felt dry. Still, I knew I had to do it. "Lisa," I said, my voice cracking slightly, She paused, glancing at me from across the room. We need to talk, she sighed, her shoulders slumping as if I was the last person she wanted to deal with. Frank, I really don't have time for this. I'm going to be late. I stepped closer, my heart pounding. I know about him. The man in the photos. I found them in the basement. For a moment, there was silence. A thick, suffocating silence that seemed to stretch on forever. Lisa's expression didn't change at first, but her eyes, something shifted there. The mask she'd been wearing slipped, just a little, and I saw something raw beneath it. Frank, she began, her voice softer now, almost pleading. You shouldn't have gone through my things. I felt a rush of anger. That's all you have to say? I shouldn't have gone through your things? You're cheating on me, Lisa. The words came out louder than I intended, my voice echoing in the small room. She flinched, her face hardening. You don't understand, she said, her voice cold. It's not that simple. I stared at her, my chest tightening. Then explain it to me. Make me understand. She looked away, her gaze shifting to the floor. For a long moment, she didn't say anything. Then, finally, she spoke. I haven't been happy, Frank. Not for a long time. I tried to tell you, but you never listened. You were always too busy, too wrapped up in your own world. I needed something, someone who made me feel alive again. Her words hit me like a punch to the gut. I felt like I couldn't breathe. So you just decided to throw everything away? 8 years, Lisa. We've been through so much together. How could you do this? She looked up at me, her eyes filled with something like regret. I'm sorry, she whispered. I never meant for it to get this far. I didn't know what to say. I felt numb, like the ground had been ripped out from under me. I turned away, my mind racing. I think you should go, I said finally, my voice barely audible. She didn't argue. She just nodded, grabbing her bag and walking towards the door. I watched her leave, the sound of the door closing echoing through the empty house. And then I was alone. Completely, utterly alone. I don't know what comes next, Reddit. I don't know if I can forgive her, or if I even want to. All I know is that the life I thought I had is gone, and I have no idea how to move forward. The hours after Lisa left were the longest of my life. The silence in the house was deafening, a constant reminder of everything that had fallen apart. I sat on the couch for what felt like an eternity, staring at the spot where she'd stood, my mind replaying our conversation over and over again. Each word echoed in my head, her voice filled with regret but lacking the love that I once believed was there. Eventually, I forced myself to move. Sitting there wasn't going to change anything. I needed to figure out what to do next. I walked through the house, picking up stray items, trying to clean up as if that would somehow make the emptiness feel less overwhelming. I found her hairbrush on the bathroom counter, her favorite mug still sitting in the kitchen sink. I put everything in a box, trying not to think about how many memories were tied to these simple, everyday things. I knew I had to tell someone. I couldn't keep this all inside. It was eating me alive. So I called my sister, Sarah. She picked up on the second ring, her cheerful voice instantly making my eyes sting with tears I had been holding back. I didn't even know how to start. Hey, Sarah, I said, my voice breaking. Frank? She asked, her tone immediately shifting, concern clear. What's wrong? And that was all it took. The words just came pouring out, and I told her everything. About the distance, the lies, the photos, the confrontation. She listened without interrupting, her quiet breaths the only sound on the other end of the line. When I finally finished, there was a long pause. Oh, Frank, she said softly. I'm so sorry. I wish I could be there right now. I swallowed, trying to keep my voice steady. I don't know what to do. I don't know if I can ever trust her again. You don't have to decide that right now, she said. Just take it one day at a time. You need time to heal, to figure out what you want. Don't put pressure on yourself to have all the answers. Her words were comforting, but they didn't take away the pain. Nothing could. Not really. But at least I didn't feel so alone anymore. We talked for a while longer, and by the time I hung up, I felt just a tiny bit lighter, like maybe I could get through the next few hours. That night, I slept on the couch. The bed felt too empty, too cold without Lisa there. I stared at the ceiling, the darkness pressing in around me, and I wondered if things could ever be okay again. I knew it would be a long road, that the hurt wouldn't disappear overnight. But maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to pick up the pieces and start over. I don't know if I'm making the right choices. I'm just trying to take it day by day, hoping that eventually I'll figure out how to move forward. Any advice or words of encouragement would mean the world to me right now. It had been a week since Lisa left. I was trying to adjust to my new reality, getting up, going to work, coming back to an empty house. The days blurred together, each one feeling more like a chore than a life. But I was surviving, and for now, that had to be enough. Then, out of nowhere, she called. It was late on a Friday evening. I was sitting on the couch, staring blankly at the TV when my phone buzzed. I glanced at the screen, my heart stopping when I saw her name. For a second, I thought about not answering, but my fingers moved on their own, and before I knew it, I had picked up. Frank? Her voice was hesitant, soft. It sounded like she had been crying. Lisa, I replied, my throat tightening. Hearing her voice brought everything rushing back, the hurt, the betrayal, the love that was still somehow tangled up with all the pain. Why are you calling? There was a pause, and I could hear her take a shaky breath. I know I'm probably the last person you want to hear from right now, but I need you to know that I'm sorry. I messed everything up, and I hate myself for it. I didn't say anything. I didn't know what to say. I could hear the raw emotion in her voice, and part of me wanted to comfort her, to tell her it was okay, even though it wasn't. Frank, I don't expect you to forgive me, she continued. I don't even expect you to talk to me. But I needed to tell you that I never stopped loving you. I was just lost, and I made the worst mistake of my life. I closed my eyes, her words cutting deep. Lisa, you hurt me, I said, my voice barely a whisper. You broke everything we had. I don't know how to come back from that. I know, she replied, her voice cracking. I know I did, and I'm so sorry. I wanted you to hear it from me. And if you never want to talk to me again, I understand. I just couldn't let it end without saying this. There was a long silence. I could hear her breathing on the other end, and I wondered if she was crying. I swallowed hard, trying to gather After Lisa's call, I found myself spiraling through emotions I didn't know I could feel in a single night. Her words echoed in my mind. I never stopped loving you, and I didn't know whether to believe them or laugh at the irony. I spent hours just pacing in my living room, trying to shake off the urge to call her back. I wanted to shout at her, cry, or beg her to come back. All those options left me feeling pathetic and more confused. The next morning, I decided I needed to get out. The house was suffocating me, every corner filled with ghosts of the life we used to have. I grabbed my coat and headed out, the rain coming down in a steady drizzle. It felt fitting, the kind of rain that wasn't heavy but could soak you through if you stayed outside too long. I started walking, no destination in mind, just needing to move. After a few blocks, I found myself outside the coffee shop Lisa and I used to go to on Sunday mornings. The sight of it made my heart clench, and before I could think better of it, I walked inside. I ordered a black coffee and sat by the window, staring out at the rain-soaked street. Everything felt like it was in slow motion, like I was watching someone else's life unravel. I was about to leave when, out of nowhere, I saw her. Lisa. She was across the street, standing under an awning, looking as lost as I felt. My breath caught in my throat. Part of me wanted to bolt, to avoid this moment entirely. But something inside me snapped. An urge, a desperate need for closure, or at least some kind of understanding. I stood up, leaving my coffee half finished, and walked out into the rain. I crossed the street, my shoes splashing in the puddles, my heart pounding in my ears. She hadn't noticed me until I was almost right in front of her. When she looked up, her eyes widened in surprise, and for a moment, neither of us said anything. The rain fell between us, and all I could think about was how we ended up here. Two strangers who used to share everything. Frank, she finally said, her voice barely audible over the rain. What are you doing here? I swallowed hard, trying to steady my voice. I don't know, I said honestly, but I can't keep pretending that everything is okay. I can't keep pretending I understand why you did this. She looked down, her shoulders slumping. I never meant to hurt you, she whispered. I know that doesn't change anything, but it's the truth. I felt the anger bubbling up again, mixing with the sadness that had been choking me for days. Why, Lisa? Why couldn't you just talk to me? Why did you have to throw everything away for him? Tears filled her eyes, and she shook her head. I don't have an answer that will make it better, Frank. I wish I did. I was lost, and I thought I needed something else to feel alive. But I was wrong. I was so wrong. The words hung in the air between us, and for a moment, I didn't know what to say. The rain kept pouring, soaking us both as we stood there, two broken people who didn't know how to fix anything. Finally, I let out a shaky breath. I don't know if I can forgive you, I said. I don't know if I even want to. But I think we both need to figure out who we are without each other. Lisa nodded, her tears mixing with the rain. I understand, she said. I'm so sorry, Frank. I turned away then, not trusting myself to say anything else. I started walking, feeling the weight of everything lift just a little, as if letting her go was the only choice I had left. The rain washed over me, and for the first time in what felt like forever, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to move forward. The days after that meeting were strange. There was a stillness, a sense of detachment from everything I thought mattered. But as much as I tried to keep moving forward, the emptiness followed me everywhere. I returned to work, tried to focus, even started exercising again to fill the time. But nothing filled the void Lisa left behind. Then, one night, something happened that changed everything. I was at home, sitting on the couch and going through old photo albums, the kind of torturous nostalgia that I couldn't seem to avoid. I was looking at a picture of Lisa and me on our second anniversary, her bright smile, the way she leaned into me like I was her entire world. It was hard to believe how far we had fallen. My phone buzzed, breaking my thoughts. It was a message from an unknown number. It simply read, I think you should know the whole story. Check your doorstep. My heart started pounding, a strange sense of fear and curiosity colliding. I stood up, my hands shaking as I walked to the front door. When I opened it, a small, unmarked package sat on the doorstep, rain droplets pooling around it. I picked it up, my breath catching in my throat. I went back inside, setting the box down on the kitchen table. The tape came off easily, and I opened the flaps, revealing a USB drive and a note. The note said, the truth. Nothing else, just those two haunting words. I hesitated, my mind racing with what this could mean. Was this from Lisa? Was it from the man she was seeing? I plugged the USB into my laptop, my fingers trembling as I clicked on the only file it contained, a video. The screen flickered to life, and my stomach dropped. It was footage of Lisa and that man. The angles were intimate, the timestamps recent. It wasn't just proof of an affair. It was brutal, raw, and left nothing to the imagination. I felt sick, my hands shaking as I tried to stop the video, but it kept playing. Their laughter, the whispered words, the intimacy that was supposed to be ours. It was like a knife twisting in my chest. When I finally managed to close the laptop, I stumbled back, the room spinning. I felt a scream build up inside me, but nothing came out. The pain was overwhelming, suffocating. I dropped to my knees, the tears finally falling as the weight of it all crushed me. This was it, the final blow. It wasn't just that she had cheated. It was how deliberate, how cold it all felt. Someone had wanted me to see this, to break me completely, and it worked. I was shattered. I don't remember much of that night. I know I smashed the laptop. I know I screamed until my throat felt raw. And I know, at some point, I found myself on the bathroom floor, staring at my reflection in the mirror, wondering how I had ended up here. How the man in the mirror had become so broken. The following morning, the world outside moved on as if nothing had happened. But something had changed within me. I woke up feeling hollow, but beneath that emptiness, there was something else. Something fierce, something that had been buried for too long. I had been broken, humiliated, torn apart, but as I stood in the wreckage of my own life, I realized I was still standing. A fire ignited within me. The pain had been unbearable, but now it was fuel. I wasn't going to let Lisa or that man define my future. I wasn't going to let anyone make me feel like a victim anymore. I was done being the weak, shattered version of myself. If they wanted to break me, they had miscalculated, because I was ready to fight back. I started by taking back control. I threw out the broken laptop, along with every reminder of Lisa that I had hidden away. The hairbrush, the mug, the photo albums. I burned them all in a metal barrel behind my house, watching the flames consume the memories that had haunted me. It was a small act of defiance, but it felt like a release. The weight on my chest began to lift as the smoke rose into the morning sky. I didn't stop there. I needed to confront the man who had invaded my life and destroyed everything I had built. It took me a few days, but I found him. Social media makes it easy to find people if you know where to look. His name was Daniel, and I knew where he worked. One afternoon, I walked into his office building, my heart pounding with adrenaline. I had no plan, just a need to face him. The receptionist tried to stop me, but I walked right past her, straight to his office. I kicked open the door, and there he was, Daniel, sitting at his desk, looking startled as hell. For a moment, he just stared at me, and I saw the fear flash in his eyes. "Frank, what the hell are you doing here?" he stammered, standing up, his hands slightly trembling. I didn't answer. Instead, I stepped closer, my voice steady, my eyes locked on his. "You thought you could take everything from me and get away with it?" He opened his mouth, but no words came out. I could see the panic in his eyes, and it fueled me. I grabbed the edge of his desk and shoved it aside, the crash echoing through the office. He backed up, his eyes wide, and for the first time, I saw him for what he really was, a coward. "You think you're a big man?" I shouted, my voice echoing. "You think you can walk into someone's life, destroy it, and just move on?" Daniel stammered, trying to say something, but I cut him off. "You don't get to win. You don't get to take my life from me." I didn't hit him. I wanted to, but I knew that wouldn't fix anything. Instead, I made him feel small, powerless, like he had made me feel. I let him see the fire in my eyes, the anger that wouldn't be extinguished. I watched as he shrank back, fear written all over his face. And then I turned and walked out, leaving him there, shaking in his overpriced suit. When I got outside, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time: power, control. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was taking back my life, one step at a time. And as I walked away from that building, I knew that this was just the beginning. I went home that day, and for the first time, I felt peace. Not because everything was fixed, it wasn't, but because I had faced my demons, and I had come out the other side stronger. I had let the beast inside me rise, not to destroy, but to protect what was left of me. And I knew that I could rebuild. I could rise from the ashes of everything that had burned down around me. This wasn't the end of my story. It was the beginning of something new, something fierce, something unstoppable. What do you think about this story? Write in comments. If you don't follow our channel, Cheating Room, you will probably never hear from us again. If you are subscribed, congratulations, you will not miss any exciting story. Thank you for listening to this shocking story with us. See you again.
Bye bye.